I mentally, I really feel as though I was ready to move out of the house at 14. Like I was ready. I obviously couldn't because I had to go to school and other things. But in turn, the story of my life, if you want the through line of my life, it's gaining independence.
My name is Paul Harvey, and this is Life, Passion and Business. We're about helping you explore, finding your passion for life and the work that you do. But it's so much more than that. It's about finding clues to the big life questions. What does it mean to be successful? What is the meaning of life? If you're looking for more, then join me on this journey where together we will discover through interviews, tools and tips how to live life full of meaning, passion and purpose. My guest on the programme is a software developer, but you'll not hear anything about computers or coding on this show. Peter Elam is passionate about education and creating communities that support people to build a better future. He's also passionate about clarity of communication. What you will discover on this podcast, however, is what are the conditions that allow people to make friends that are lasting, the conditions that allow someone to live in a supportive community, and the importance of wet social cement. Tell me, have you considered how many friends you have and how strong those connections are? For me, as a man at the wrong end of 50 plus, I resonate well with Peter. See, the internet and social media was meant to connect us and lead us to stronger communities. And yes, it has allowed me to meet and interact with some amazing people. And you're listening to the show because of that amazing technology. But it's not enriching my friendships. And as I get older, I can see that unless I do something different, my social circle will get smaller. Food for thought, eh? Peter was born in a largish family, one of 5 children. He grew up just outside Washington, D.C. and went to James Madison University to study technology. The Washington environment was both political and tribal, and Peter pushed back against it. He was ready to find independent living well before the age to do so. After college, he moved to San Diego with friends and did some further study in technology and education at the University of Texas in Austin. He ended up teaching at the university and started the technology lab, employing talented people to create software and systems to support research projects. So a professor gets a grant to build a project that involves technology, and Peter and his team would be there to make it happen. He hired lots of talented people, students and very bright high performers. Over the years, he discovered the importance of community to these people and how they struggled to establish strong connections, particularly when they left to find jobs in other parts of the country. It led him on a journey and some personal research to explore the ideas behind good communication and what it takes to build strong relationships. The university job ran its course and he left to create a successful software development business with his brother, and it allowed him to become a digital nomad. He's been living in locations around the world for the last 6 years and most recently has been staying a lot in Mexico City. Throughout that time, he's continued to explore his ideas around community and relationship and the ingredients that allow people to thrive. He has determined that community, growth and purpose are the most important factors in social well-being. When someone is struggling, at least one of these is typically lacking. Peter has founded an organisation called No Tribe that aims to help adults in urban environments find community, growth and purpose. The project is still in its early stages, but it has become his life mission. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Peter Elam. So thank you, Peter, for taking the time to be with me today.
Well, thanks for having me.
So look, this is Life, Passion and Business, and we're all about the journey, how you got to where you are now and where passion was involved, where you lost it, where you gained it, and all the journey thereabouts. So where did it all start for you? Where did you grow up?
I grew up outside of Washington, D.C. I was part of a pretty big family there. I went to university.
Pretty big? So how pretty big?
I have a brother and 3 sisters, so five children.
You see, in my generation, my mother was the last of 13 children.
Well, that's why I say pretty big, right? If I had said big, then if I would have said big, then it would have been
Yeah. Of
then
course
it
it
would be
would. Of
worse.
course it would. Yeah.
So I grew up outside DC and then went to university close there, a university called James Madison University. And then after that, I moved across the country to San Diego with friends.
Mm-hmm.
My background, work background was very much technology focused, and I really was into education. And so while I was in San Diego, I kind of pivoted from education to from technology to technology and education. Ended up going to Austin for the University of Texas for graduate school for educational technology because those were kind of two passions of mine.
Mm-hmm.
The actual program that I went to wasn't necessarily my favorite thing, but in there I started working for the university and I started a technology lab that was really just a fascinating experience. So I hired lots of people, students and others, to do educational technology projects for the university. And these were very high performing people, very bright, great people to work with, people that had other options. So it was really great to recruit them and to work with them. But I was in this very sort of dysfunctional, larger environment in the case of the department I was in the university. So it was this constant struggle of running something that was very high performing and very well liked and all sorts of different things in a larger scenario that wasn't like that. And
so hold on a minute before, because this is something very all adult and grown up and all very sophisticated and clever. So let's spin it right back a bit to what did you want to be when you got big? What did you want to be when you were young? What was the plan?
I would say before I knew what it was, the answer to that would be like college professor.
You were an adult before you were even growing up.
Yeah, sort of. You know what? Honestly, the funny thing about that is, I talk to my friends about this. I really feel as though I was ready to move out of the house at 14. Like I was ready. I obviously couldn't because I had to go to school and other things. Yeah. But in turn, the story of my life, if you want the through line of my life, it's gaining independence. Yeah. So for me going to school, high school and all that kind of stuff, even college, it was like, this is something to get through so that I can do what I want on my own. And I just have a very strong independent streak, even relationships and other things. So in a way, yeah, I have been kind of grown up since I was a little kid,
were you ever called an old head on young shoulders?
No, because I'm not like, I like to have fun and I'm not like that kind of person. So no, I haven't, but there's a part of me that's been grown up for a long time, for sure.
But anyway, so you were an independent streak. So you strove for independence quite early with the sounds of it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And in multiple ways too. I mean, one of the things about growing up outside of DC is you're inundated with politics all the time. So, I mean, we all have politics, but I mean, when you're there, it's just nonstop. From the time I was little, it was politics. And one of the things that we can see about politics, now more than ever, it's very tribal. And so it's forcing you into ways of thinking. So I was very resistant to all that stuff. I was very resistant to you're going to think this way. This is the way to think. These are I really pushed back against all that stuff. And so actually for me, I didn't know what critical thinking was or anything like that was. But when I went to university, I took this philosophy class that was Intro to Critical Thinking. And it was like a revelation to me, because this was like a topic where it's like the whole point of this is to get out of structures of thinking and all of us are born into these environments where people are thinking in certain ways. And this was a thing to kind of let you escape that. So I mean, it was my favorite class by far. This is a philosophy class. It was in the philosophy department. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And it's about critical thinking.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I
That was
always
the
think
title
of
of the class.
philosophy as the great philosophers, and I always think it was more of a historical thing rather than
Well, a lot of
modern
the
thing.
courses were like that. They were talking about the great philosophers, or even the modern sort of debates in philosophy. I
Mm.
really, really liked philosophy. I really liked those classes. Those are the classes I enjoyed. But I didn't. What I didn't like is the pure academic nature of it, and how it didn't actually end up touching the real world and solving real world problems. And I don't want to
Yeah,
like.
you can be philosophical, but in the end, you still got to eat.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I mean, it's in the university is an academic discipline.
Mm.
So, you kind of have to want to teach or maybe go to law school or something. But if you actually want to do stuff in the world, it can be a little bit tough
So
to
look,
stick
you
with.
ended up you did a course. Obviously, you studied by the sound well, and obviously you were good at it. And you ended up somewhere else, and you ended up running something at the university. 'Cause I didn't quite get what you were
Yeah,
running.
yeah. So it was a technology lab.
Okay.
So basically, it was a lab in which at the university, let's say a professor would get a grant to build a project that involved technology. They actually had a really hard time getting that built for boring bureaucratic reasons. So they would come to my department, and we had really talented people that actually build these technology projects. So it was designers and software developers, but very talented, very, very talented people.
Can you, I mean, for the sake of my listeners, kind of like coming
Yeah.
in a technology project, what does that mean? I mean,
So
are we
so
talking
what?
about soldering bits together and making electronic stuff, or are we talking about coding, or are we
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about building rocket engines? What are we talking about here?
It was all rocket engines. We just did all
Oh,
sorts.
oh, that's really topical. Now you should have said rocket engines before,
Well, we
because
did.
everyone got excited.
Yeah, well, we didn't do any rocket engines. I can guarantee that. No, it was software stuff. It was a wide variety of software things, but it could be things for an astronomy department. It could be an educational
Yeah.
game. It could be all sorts of different things. But it was software. Yeah, we weren't building rockets. I wasn't given the resources to do something like that. That tends
Oh,
to be.
dear me,
You tend
dear.
to need a lot of capital to get started in the rocket business. I think.
Probably, yes. Probably, yes. Yeah, yeah, you probably do. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
all right, you've got this technology department, and it sounds like you were doing good stuff. It sounds like you
yeah.
were really, really making it crack there and you had some really intelligent people around you. Must have been interesting working with a room of clever people.
It was great. I mean, it was great. And one of the coolest things about it was we needed a certain type of person,
Yeah.
and so we had this really cool way of recruiting people. So we basically set up this boot camp, you may have heard of there's different technology boot camps. Maybe you have, maybe not, but a lot of people go to them now to learn how to code or something like that,
Hmm.
and they generally are fairly expensive. So we set up one that was a boot camp for the type of people we were looking for, which was designers and developers that had just certain ability to learn fast and were smart, basically, and they had
Yeah.
the right personality. And it was free. So it was very selective to get in, but the upside for me was I got to cherry pick who I wanted to work for me after seeing them perform, and for the rest of them, I helped them get jobs in the community. So I had a lot of sort of connections with the really good companies in around Austin. So it was just a really cool experience because that was an opportunity. University of Texas is one of the largest universities in the
Yeah,
United
yeah,
States.
yeah.
It's enormous.
Yeah.
So for creating small community in that big university, that was kind of a side effect. This was a technology thing, but there's a big social side to this, which is for students that didn't get plugged in to their little group early on, usually their freshman year, it's real easy to get lost in that university and just kind of feel like just going along with the school
Mm.
of fish and not finding that. So one of the real interesting things in this process was for me was a lot of the students, when they had to move on, they graduated and stuff, they had a hard time leaving because of the community aspect to it, that they had not experienced this kind of thing before. They hadn't found their group, and this was their thing. And then when they went on to a normal job, a real job, it just wasn't like that for them. And that really had an impact on me, just generationally, like that. Hey, a lot of these, not everybody, of course, but a lot of students, younger people, and I think increasingly older people too, are having trouble finding that. Having trouble finding their little group. There's certain things that are set up for certain people to find that. But, a lot of the students that I had, they got great jobs, but they moved to a new city. They didn't know anybody and they had to kind of start over. And that was really difficult for a lot of them. And so that was the very, very early genesis of kind of the community thing. And it was sort of a side effect of something totally else that I was doing.
It's a massive problem, I mean, you talk about that. I mean, that's not just that is a problem that's really across certainly across the first world. I'm not sure about the third world, because I think there's more, but the communities are tighter.
Yeah.
But certainly, I would put myself in that thing. I mean, I have a few friends that I know a lot of people, and I have a lot of people who I would call friends, but I don't have any close friends anymore that I would say, well, I have a couple maybe. But, I have a family situation, but you can really understand that when a partner dies, how people get left behind, because they don't actually know how to make friends anymore. They've just lost that connection thing.
Right. Well, and also even isolating your family unit so much, even if you have a great family, it's not good. Like there was actually, have you ever heard of David Brooks? Do you know who he is? He's a columnist for the New York Times. And anyways, he wrote this really, really interesting article. I think it was the beginning of 2019, about the nuclear family is a failure. Okay. And David Brooks is, he's kind of more conservative leaning, so he's the type of person you would think would be more like into the nuclear family. But his point, which I think was a great article, but his point in the article was, kids are meant to grow up in multi-generation environments where there's a lot extended family. You're not meant to isolate father, mother, kid, and then some neighbors in the suburbs.
And the beauty of extended family, of course, is that you get to experience different age groups and different generations, and you get to get different input from the
exactly,
which we're really missing.
Yeah, and like if you are a child who, let's say your father is an alcoholic, okay, and you're living in a house in the suburbs or just in a nuclear family, you got one father that's an overwhelming influence that's really, really going to mess you up, okay? If you're living in an extended community in which you have multiple male role models, the impact, you're not so dependent on your father being perfect or doing the good job. You have these other inputs and other impacts. And, sometimes people get surrogate fathers through like coaches and, that's how they find it. But just by and large, having one person, your mother and your father, be like this massive, massive impact on you, and you don't get the input, like you're saying, from multiple different angles. I think we're just not designed to live like that. I mean, So the thing with No Child, or the thing with the community building, that was kind of the spark, but it really kind of led me down the path of researching this and trying to understand it. Because I do hear from lots of people about the difficulty in making friends, the difficulty of having close friends, the difficulty of building community, in different regions, just like you said, in different regions of the world.
Were you researching that just out of personal interest, or was this part of your? It wasn't part of your role as such. So you're
no, it was personal interest, and that's why the kind of second organization is a passion project for me, because this is totally pure personal interest.
So let's get back to the story, because I can get geeked out with all this sort of stuff and I get on tangents. But I just do this. I'm terrible host.
I like tangents.
Terrible host. So you're at this university. You're in it. Suddenly, it wasn't fitting the bill anymore. So you left. What changed for you?
To not make it boring, but basically I should have left a lot earlier, but the thing had so much promise in the environment it was that I pushed it beyond what it should have been. But there was so many, I can't tell you the number of conversations that I had with people at the university that were like, why are you here? There aren't people like you here. I would hear that all the time. Right. But the thing that kind of kept me going was I had kind of an entrepreneurial type thing within this larger university. But the problem is that works until it doesn't work, right? If the thing that you're under somebody, and if they're just not functional, or they don't believe in you or whatever, then you're just at their whims. And so the bottom line was there's some things that happened with a project that I got funding for that were just so egregiously bad that I was like, it was a blessing, because it was like, this is finally so bad that it kind of pushed me out the door. And I needed that to happen. I probably needed it to happen several years earlier, but whatever, it happened when it happened.
Well, the universe does this. Eventually you get the message.
Yeah, exactly. So I got the message. It was not a fun experience, but as you know, like a lot of messages don't come in fun packages.
No.
But so I did that, and then I started a business with my brother. And initially, we actually were more of a consulting business, and then it kind of evolved over time.
Consulting into what area?
Well, it was actually a lot of technology type consulting. So, anyways, we started down that path, and then I ended up getting a grant from the federal government. And long story, I mean, those details aren't super interesting, but it ended up me actually starting to do some software development in this other product. But during this whole time, I was continuing to research the community thing. It was something that it was a spark in me for a really, really long time. And then, like I said, so I saw it again when I did this thing at the university. And then as I was going, it was just this constant, it's one of the things you asked me that I want to change an answer. So you asked me, what did I want to do when I grow up?
Yeah.
And I said, college professor. That was true for certain ages, right? But I'd say right. If you had talked to me around college age, what I would have told you was I want to start a school. That's what I would have told you. I was really, really into education reform. I had a job when I moved to San Diego. So I worked my way through university in Virginia. After that, I lived with my buddies. We lived at a beach community for a summer. And it's the first time I had like a fun waiting tables at the beach type job, and I loved it. So we experienced that. And then when I moved to San Diego, I had this terrible job. I mean, it paid well, but we had nothing to do with a government contractor. It was such a good example of like government waste. If you ever need some go-to examples of government waste, I have some very good firsthand experiences. But it was one of these jobs where like there's a room full of people that literally had nothing to do all day, right? So I was 22 years old, 23. I wrote this like 100-page manifesto about education and about my experiences with it and where I saw it going or where it should go. And I mean, it was just a weird thing to do, but it was just like, these were things that I was thinking about. And I was like, I'm really super interested in that topic because I really think education is done so suboptimally compared to what it could be. I mean, you have to rethink of things, but it's a real shame.
Well, when you consider where education came from, I mean, originally it came with the whole idea of education was to train people to go into work in factories.
Yeah.
And the whole process was about timekeeping and basically sort of like taking orders, doing bits, and we still have the same structure of education. We still test people in the same ways and expect them to do the same sort of things. And the workplace has moved on. There are not many factories around that take people anymore nowadays. And then employers go, but the kids don't know anything.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have enough time to go into all those details.
No, I know we don't. I know we don't. Because it's another rabbit hole we could go climbing down. So clearly it's something you're passionate about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that the long story short, it's something I've put a lot of thought into. And I actually ended up teaching. So I taught at a really this for-profit college in San Diego and ended up teaching at the University of Texas too. And one of the things I was actually teaching, it was sort of a technology class. It was basically an intro to like the school, all those tools that you would need for digital projects. So like Photoshop and building simple websites. It was kind of like a survey of different tools. But one of the cool things about it was, and especially the boot camp I did, the cool thing about it was rather than just being like things should be different, I got a chance to do things differently. My class looked totally different than what I had experienced. The boot camp was like, this is something I wish I would have had that never existed, but then I got a chance to do it,
They are fun. It is fun when you can do that.
Right. So that was really, really cool. So anyways, the education piece was really big deal to me. Starting a school was a really, really big thing to me. Then I actually worked in a lot of schools and I saw what it actually looks like to start a school and how hard it is and what it actually looks like for the person in that position, their day-to-day interactions with people. And I was like, maybe I'm not the best.
I have been a trustee for a school.
What type of school?
It was the Steiner School.
The Steiner School?
Steiner School, yeah.
Could you familiarize me with the Steiner School?
A Steiner School, have you heard of Montessori?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, Steiner is the opposite of Montessori. So Montessori is very structured and Steiner is very unstructured. Okay. And Rudolf Steiner was a German philosopher and stuff, an artist and he created this model for education for children, which basically is fantastic.
Yeah, you're a believer.
Yeah, oh, it's amazing, amazing. So that's, I mean, my son was at it. That's why I was a trustee at it, and it's an amazing form of education.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, it flies in the face of mainstream. Put it that way.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I know, but I know the difficulties of running a school. So you didn't go down that road then. You did. How long did you last in teaching?
Well, I ended up teaching. I actually have taught a lot of different levels, and a lot of different things. But I was teaching actually all the way up to the end at the university. So the early part of my stage in the university, I wasn't teaching. I had taught before that, and then I taught the last few years I was there. So I kind of towards the end. And I am geared towards adult learners for sure. I'm not. I really like adult learners, and I've had a lot of fun doing that group. But under that, I'm not as good.
So it sounds like you had a lot of these things were opportunities to explore your passion for community building and your passion for learning. By the sounds of it, or teaching learning. Is that what it is? Learning itself, or the expression of learning?
Well, so I just think, like you were talking about with the Steiner School, this whole philosophy and environment of it's not just learning subject, it's shaping the person and how they think and so forth. I think in the United States, especially, not just here, but for a lot of kids. So I've worked in like special ed kids where the families were a mess, like a mess. The chance this kid had to be something was because of a positive influence of the school, because the home life was not going to give him or her that, right? So that's a big burden to put on a school, but at the same time, like that's just the reality for so many families, especially low-income families, is like either they have some amazing experience at school, or they're 1 in a million chance of escaping the situation that they're in. So yeah, we could, I mean, so the funny thing, so politically, I was talking about politically, like I'm very, very politically independent. The one kind of issue that you would kind of nail me on is like having a real strong point of view on that doesn't, I mean, it changes somewhat, but it is definitely education reform. That's kind of an issue that I think a lot about and care a lot about. And I wish it was cared about more. There's other issues that people discuss and think about, but I just don't think they understand how big a difference having an awesome school system would impact on a society and how much damage it does not to have one. So anyways, that's kind of a side thing, but the community building part was something that I started to research and really think about and learn, like you're talking about, hey, I put myself in this category about, friends and stuff, and really researching like, what are the conditions that allow people to make friends that are lasting? What are the conditions that allow someone to live in a really tight community versus a not a tight community? Because as you said too, it's like you go to different places, like different parts of the world, even in the first world, there's friendlier and less friendly countries in the first world. There's places that you would feel very welcomed, a certain town in the first world, and then you go to a city and you'd feel totally ignored, right? And so anyways, I did a lot of research into the conditions that you need to satisfy and really to have tight community, and how few of them there really are in the modern urban world. I mean, our world developed, like you were talking about with manufacturing, it developed economically. And because it developed economically, all of our arrangements are set up around economics, about where there's jobs and building an economy. It is not set up or concerned about making sure you have community. It's just not. It's set up around making the economy strong and generating tax revenue. That's why the structures we have in place are in place. And so you have to kind of be able to get outside of that and take a look around and say, why are things the way they are, and how could they be in order to have a much, much better community? And so that's the type of research that I was doing.
So what conclusion did you come to?
So there's a few things. So I actually have a sort of diagram that I put together that are the main things, but I'll just hit some of the highlights. So one of the real difficult things that you need is repeated interactions over time. Okay. So this is why, like, if you try to build let's say an occasional online community or something like that, it can be so hard, because if the interactions aren't repeated over time, then the relationship building won't happen. So that's just one, not to the same extent. Right. Another one is commitment. So it's like you're not just sort of in the group, you're actually in the group, so there's an actual tight commitment to it. Another one is proximity, physical proximity. So this is why, like, if you're living in like a dorm on a college campus, you can really easily make friends there because you have the repeated interaction, you have the proximity. But then when you move out to the suburbs and all of a sudden your interactions are intermittent, they're not as common. And now you have to get in a car when you want to go somewhere, or something like that. Like that, it's a huge, huge barrier. Another thing is a common purpose. So people getting together and driving towards a common goal that they all care about. So these are a couple of the highlights, but these are things that you'll see in, like, say, for instance, religious institutions traditionally. That was a community, a very important part of the community for lots of people traditionally in your country and in mine. And then in both of our countries, that is in the decline, right? So if you used to move to a new town and you were of a certain faith, you could join a church or a synagogue or whatever of that faith. And you had some of that, just some of the things that I just talked about. You had,
it was in the community. That's the point. I think that the kind of downscaling of traditional religion, the passing of the age of deference in a way has meant that we don't defer to the church, the pastor, the priest anymore. We don't see that as relevant, and it killed society, as you say. It took away that community aspect of it. And exactly what you're saying. I'm just thinking what you're saying. The military is a good place for it.
Well, and especially and let me just, sorry to interrupt, but especially in the military. If you think about like a boot camp situation. So one of the other ingredients is when people are new together. Okay. So this is why, like, you see an expat community in a foreign city where it's tough. If it's tough to break into, let's say a city environment where people have been there forever. It's tough to break into their social circles because their social circles are established. When people are all new to something together and the cement of their social circles are wet. So this is why in the United States, for people that go to like a campus style university, their very first year, their dorm, a lot of the friends they make there are lifelong friends, because that's an environment where all the boxes are checked. And then, but you don't get that environment over and over again in adult life. It's kind of a special time. So like a couple of the people that I met during that time have been friends since then, right? But people I even met the third year of college versus the first, it's not the same. So one quick example too, I'll give. So one of my friends does this thing called Semester at Sea. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but it's essentially a study abroad type situation, but it's on a cruise ship, and they go from port to port to port in the course of a semester in like either Asia, or they have different ones, but it's this incredibly intense experience. But like, think about all the things that are happening there. You have all these, and the students come from different schools. So you have all these people experiencing this. They don't have established things, so that the cement's wet socially. They're on a ship, right? So the proximity is there. They're confined. They have repeated interactions day after day after day. They're dealing with these experiences in which they're fish out of water. So they're navigating. But so there's all these kind of crazy community building compression, almost an artificial environment. But one of the things that happens out of it is the kids that do this and the staff that do this, they have a hard time going back to normal life, because they have this, first of all, this intense experience, but the community part of it is so important to them. It's something they haven't experienced before. Then they go back to normal life. You're like, okay, now I'm supposed to just go back to my job and, on down the line. But it's just, to me, it's instructive to learn what is it about that environment that is so impactful and this other environment that's not, and just kind of systematize it a little bit.
Yeah, and you see it, don't you? Because a lot of people in the services come out of the services, and of course, they've got all these buddies, this, that, and the other, and the structure's uniform, and they end up going back into a uniform service because they can't survive without that structure, without those close buddies again. So they find another one. And
if they were in combat, for instance, and they that's an extra bonding thing where it's just the common purpose and the common danger and everything is such a intense bonding thing that while I'm sure it's incredibly tough to go through. And when they're there, they probably wouldn't get out of it. Then they leave and they're like, man, there's nothing like this in normal world. So those kind of ingredients are the things that I think through a lot. And to see how can you recreate things like that are successful in sort of the modern world.
You've got a project which does this somehow?
Well, so it just started. So again, I just founded this right before COVID, but I've been doing research about specifically trying to do something concrete for the last couple of years. One of the first ideas of it was similar to like a co-working space kind of thing. Yep. But I actually did a lot of work in co-working and research and talked to a lot of people that ran them. And there's actually things about that environment it's actually hard to build community in there for a variety of reasons. All of them try to, and some more successfully than other, but there's lots of things working against it. So the thing that I'm trying to at least start with, and again, I'm in the mode of like, this is my initial idea. I'm trying to find people to do it with. But this is a learning thing, 100% learning thing. This is not like I have all the answers. This is going to be the thing. But one of the big things that's hard about building community in a co-working space is actually the physical environment. Okay. Because in a place like that, you're trying to pay the bills. So there's usually a big community space with very low audio privacy. So, if you want to have so one of the ingredients of community building is vulnerability. I shouldn't have skipped that one. So being in a vulnerable situation is bonding. So we talked about with the military and stuff. So if you want to build community, that's why like fraternities and stuff and social organizations in the UK and stuff, they'll have these hazing experiences. Part of that hazing is to have that group that's coming up together, have this vulnerable experience together, which is what bonds them, is they're going through something terrible together. So anyways, you can't be super vulnerable with somebody or have a vulnerable interaction when the whole room of strangers can hear what's going on, hear your conversation. So actually audio privacy is really important. And then you also have conference rooms, you have like desks. So it's just not necessarily an environment to do certain types of things that you want to do for community building. So what I really, really like, and I think is the perfect environment, is large old houses, sort of Victorian style houses. And so one thing we kind of skipped over is when I left University of Texas, I also became a digital nomad. So I've been living around the world for the last 6 years. And most recently, I've been staying a lot in Mexico City, and they have tons of beautiful, beautiful, large houses in the center part of that city. And that really served as inspiration, because I was like, man, if you had a location like that, homes are the perfect place to build community. If, of a certain size, a small apartment, not necessarily, but because you have these different environments, right? So you have like the kitchen, which can be like a social gathering place. You have, places that are designed for like larger gatherings. And then you have places that are designed for more intimate, private gatherings. And those environments, you can move from environment to environment depending on what you're trying to do. So, so my idea is sort of like a social club. Okay, similar to a social club, but the difficulty with social clubs around the world is social clubs really, really key on social status, right? So they tend to be very narrow band of people on social status, and they tend to devolve into people that are trying to climb up that status ladder, right? So the question is, how do you create a social club that's a little bit more values-based than just kind of class-based? And it serves as a way of uniting sort of the different I would say not for profit, but cause organizations in the city that are kind of all doing their own thing. How do you create a space that sort of is a uniting of those efforts, and it is a place for people of certain values to find one another and to really like enjoy being together? So that's a really quick, a high level view of a very, very complicated thing. But it
is. I mean, there are whole organizations around community building. So I mean, I live in a place near the Findhorn Foundation, which is a 60-year-old community. And it was started by 3 people that literally had nowhere to go. So they turned up in a caravan and set this caravan on the sand there and started growing vegetables outside the door. And people, and it's a spiritual community because that's how they did it. They did it from a spiritual perspective. And there was no religion per se. It was just about connection with nature and connection with the wider world. And it grew to a huge community. They just had a fire
Yeah.
last week, which is not particularly great. So,
Oh,
but they were seeing, I don't know, 15,000 people a year were passing through that place, and people would form very strong bonds with that community because they literally had all the things you said. Because people would come together, community
yeah.
center, do things together, sing together,
Yeah.
laugh together, play together.
So yeah, and so that there's one other aspect that I wanted to bring up too about community building, which is why it's hard in the modern era, is just scale. It's just the number of people in the room. Like, so for instance, if you are let's say you go into an office or something like that, and the size of the office is such that everybody knows everybody else by name, okay? And then that same office reaches a scale in which now all of a sudden, not everybody knows everyone else's name. That tipping point of going from no strangers to some strangers is massive. Because what happens is you go from an expectation of when the person walks in the room saying hello to when the person walks to maybe ignoring them, right? Because once you reach a certain size, you can't say hello to everybody. So that's another one of the problems with co-working spaces sometimes is they need to scale to a point where they just, there has to be strangers. And then once they're strangers, then everything changes. So part of this too is even in a big thing like a big city, finding a small enough scale in which people recognize each other, they say hello to one another. When they come or go, that's acknowledged. You know, when you come in the door, do people say hello, or is that not even acknowledged, right? And so much of that is about the scale, which is why as a community gets bigger and bigger, or business or town or whatever gets bigger and bigger, you can kind of lose that feeling of community, is because strangers are introduced.
So this isn't a paid project. This is fun for you, isn't it? This idea of community.
This is fun. I would so. We're not even going through your questions, but for me, this is my purpose. This isn't a project that's kind of like, I hope to launch it and go on to the next thing. This is, regardless of how my income comes in from now until I can't do it anymore, this is the kind of thing that day to day I think about, care about, want to work towards. And it's what it actually looks like, how it actually functions. Will change over time, I'm sure, as I learn. But I mean, I think about it all the time.
And your day-to-day life is software development still, isn't it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. It's amazing, but it's like you feel, well, sorry to say, you sound a little imbalanced really in a way, because you've got this passion project, which is huge. Are you passionate about the software that you develop?
Yeah. So the software stuff is really another one of my passions, which is clarity and communication. So the initial design of the software is really to take, so for instance, people write books. Most books don't make much money, but the reason people write them, a lot of people, not everybody, is to gain some prestige for other things, for speaking or other things, right? That's kind of the circuit, you know? But the problem with that is, while books do convey prestige, they are, if you're writing something nonfiction, they are often the not a most efficient way to get your ideas across, right? Like if your goal was like prestige, take prestige out of it, take like I'm going to be the thought leader out of it. It's just about, I've got these ideas and I want to communicate them. You wouldn't do it in book form. Because you've for lots of reasons. One, you've introduced a huge barrier to even someone seeing your idea, which is they've got to buy a book, right? So that's one. Two, depending on what you're trying to convey, it might be better conveyed through podcast or through audio or video or something else, right? For images, diagrams, whatever. Third, you want to change it and evolve it over time, which is, a book is kind of set in stone. So there's some things books are great for, and especially things that tell stories, that need to be long. But there's so many things where it's like, and everybody experiences this, where like some guru is telling you like the 10 management principles, and you're kind of like, get to the point. I want to see the list of the 10 principles, right? And so I'm someone who is interested in the ideas, not all the other stuff. And so for those who want to communicate, like when I'm communicating with you, the trouble that I have is like the stuff that went into all the community ideas is like, it's a list of 100 bullet points, right? And what I've got to do over and over again and learn to do better is condense that to 5 or whatever. It could be, so that at the end of a conversation like this, the next time I have it, the next person will be even more clear, right? So what I'm trying to do is say, like, trying to get what's in my head, simplify it, and put it in a clear way in your head, right? To greater or less success. That's what I'm trying to do. But other people are not trying to do that, right? They're trying to take maybe some very simple ideas, make them fill some pages that make them more complicated than they need to be. And so that passion for me of, hey, there's a lot of people with great ideas out there, and helping them communicate with clarity when their goal is communication. That's kind of the big part of the software project.
So how does it work? I mean, is that an app? Is it what?
It's a web application. So what it really does is, because I came from educational technology, there's lots of things out there that help you like design and build courses and that kind of thing. This is like a hyper simplified version of that. So like, let's say that you had something communicate, like let's say, hey, the 5 things, the 5 principles you want to communicate, right? And you're trying to figure out how I could do a blog post, or, you have these different options. This kind of just lets you put audio, text, video together, assessment questions too. So if you want to communicate as a 2-way conversation with the people you're sending it away to, it makes that super duper easy.
So okay. It's like someone with a thought leader with some ideas trying to communicate to a team or to communicate can create something on your package.
Yeah. And it's just so easy to do. So you don't need to go through instructions, or, I mean, it's just like in 10 minutes you can do it. Wow. And then the other thing that's cool about it is, if you want to have your ideas expand into an organization. So one of the really difficult things is, if let's say you put out a course, or you put up a PDF or any kind of material you put out, typically that stuff is either static, meaning like it can't be changed, or you lose control of it. Yeah. So if you send out a Word document that someone can edit, it's out in the wild, So what this allows you to do is, let's say you have some content you really worked really hard on creating, and you're really proud of it. You can have an organization adopt that, or a consultant or someone adopt it, change it to be relevant to their context, but then you retain control. So like, if let's say you're collecting a licensing fee or something like that, and they stop paying, you can actually cut off their access to it. So it basically allows you to spread your ideas into organizations and other things really easily. In such a way they can change them and edit them if you want them to, but you retain control of them. So that's kind of the.
Who's it for? Who is it particularly for?
So the people that are using it the most are either people doing internal training, so like they're trying to do staff trainings, that kind of thing, or consultants. So the consultants that want to either engage with their clients in a really high level way. So instead of emailing them a PowerPoint presentation, you can do like way cooler stuff with this than that, and also customize it. So you can give each client a customized experience. And then some consultants want to expand into organizations, and this helps them do that. So those are the 2 primary use cases. There are people who build courses and things, but the course building world, the people that are trying to build courses and sell them, there's lots of tools for those people.
There are lots of tools. And that's what I initially thought about it. It's a fascinating story anyway. And I can see where the passion comes for you in it, because it's the same thing. It's that communication thing. It's that teaching thing.
Exactly.
You're a frustrated teacher, aren't you? That's what you are.
Well, in some respects, yes. In some respects, no. I mean, there's downsides to the teacher-student relationship too. I know. So
I'm just teasing you. It's fine. It's fine. It's okay. So look, what's your success model?
So for me, so even kind of below the community thing is actually community for people of certain values. So one thing that might be different than me than you might think is that, like a lot of nonprofits, we're trying to make everything better for everybody. Like we take all comers type of thing. I actually am someone who believes the reason the world is not better than it could be is because the wrong type of people actually are in positions of influence and power. And by the way, this is the entire project of government since people got, how do you get a wise king or whatever is the project of government. It's not, obviously not an easy thing to solve. And
well, the trouble is we've got no control, and we put narcissists in charge, and we put psychopaths in charge, and then we expect good things to happen.
Well, but what's it? So, but that's a really good point. And so, as you know, from my country, we had a very fascinating, experience with all that. So when I look at that, okay, so what most people talk about is the person, right? Like, how does this person get there? How do they get in that position? But what I think about is the system. But what is the system that enabled that to happen? That enabled that person to be? Is that the best and wisest in our country? You know what I mean? Not even remotely close. Don't shrug.
Well, the point is, I agree with you, but the point is, the trouble is, all right, this is a side point, really. No country chooses their politicians wisely, and some do it more wisely than others. And there should be an entrance exam to be a politician. Before you can be a politician, you should have some basic things like, some basic awareness of emotional IQ, for example.
So what you just suggested is a change to the system, right?
Yeah.
So an entry test now, and some cities and stuff have civil service tests where you have to pass those in order to in a place like Singapore, you have to be smart to even work in their government. The civil service test is extremely competitive. So, and Singapore is really well governed in a lot of ways. So there's two reactions. There's the one reaction is like, yeah, if you're waiting for a wise politician, like keep waiting. But that's not really the right reaction is like, look, man, I spent tons of times in Mexico, right? And if you, as much as I want to complain, or you would want to complain about the government of the UK or the government of the United States.
Can you imagine Mexico is a different kettle of fish?
It's profound. Like, if that country was governed as wisely as the UK was governed, the difference would be massive, absolutely massive. One of all the blessings the United States has had, one of the absolute largest blessings was our government descended from UK, not Spain. Okay, yes. And all the governments around the world, the major countries that descended from UK. I mean, India is a little bit different situation, but talk about Australia.
Most of them took some of the
Hong Kong.
Someone took some of the structures.
Singapore, the UK was excellent at government, and what that unlocked in potential in those societies compared to their neighbors. I mean, you look at the performance of Singapore compared to Malaysia. It's two totally different worlds. It's not like tiny percentages here and there. It's a different world. It's Malaysia, a very poor country, which surrounds Singapore, which is, if not the wealthiest city in the world, the top 5, and an inspiration for a government. So, of course, getting a government that's not corrupt is impossible. But what you want to do is take a step in that direction, right? And in the case of what I'm
sorry, I like this conversation, but I think we're going down rabbit holes all the time here. So because you and I obviously have very similar conversations going on in our heads. Where does success fit in with this?
I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Okay, you're getting there.
Okay. So anyways, in any organization that you're in whether it be a family, a business, your church, a government, whatever, the quality of the leadership at the top is going to have an incredible impact on that entire organization. So if you want a successful organization, whatever you're talking about, what you really want is that person at the top to be as quality as possible. Okay. And when you look at the United States culture and the culture, a lot of the Western world, where you look at a lot of the people who actually do wield lots of outsized power, a lot of them are not who you would necessarily call wise. There are a lot of times you would characterize them as ruthless or other things like that. And one of the things that they do is what wealthy people do is they leverage networks. They are constantly networking with other wealthy people and powerful people, and they're constantly that is something that's not afforded to everybody else, right? So getting in the right school, getting in the right club, and then mixing, and then that propels you to power. So part of my passion and what success looks to me is the people with the values that I share, that share their values with me, that they are afforded an opportunity to network and to help propel them in getting opportunities that I never had, right? Finding the version of me, or not necessarily me, a clone, but similar values to me, that's 20, and actually giving them a path that's like, hey, you don't have to sell out and just to make money, and like here's an alternative path that actually is worthwhile. That's what success looks like to me, is working with those type of people. So people I really respect along that mission to create that, but then really helping those people, 20 years behind me, that to give them an infrastructure to like have an awesome life that's successful, but empower them to actually be in leadership positions and make a real difference. So to me, it's like, of all the things that people talk about making the world a better place, it's all comes down to one problem. How do you get people in leadership and powerful positions to be the right people? And everything else is secondary to that. So that's success to me, is helping where I can along those lines.
Yeah, absolutely. Good leadership you can't beat it really, can you really? Because it's yeah, absolutely. So what would you say is your contribution to the world and to yourself?
Well, so hopefully just the kind of what I laid out would be the contribution to the world, is trying to create these environments that really help the right people, accelerate them and help them. For myself, I mean, I don't know, other than like, I think it's important for people that can find it to have sort of a mission that kind of points their direction for the course of their lives. I mean, a lot of people are looking for that. And if you're fortunate enough to find it, that's great. And so that's what it is for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's. I mean, you are clearly contributing. The collaboration stuff and the communities building is certainly a massive contribution to the world, because it's like there's such. Social media was supposed to connect us. I don't think it's done a good job.
Well, so how would you answer the question? The contribution question.
Yours or mine?
Yours.
Mine. Gosh.
Yeah.
Flipping it around on me. I don't know. Cheeky monkey. Yeah, fine. My contribution to the world is about moving people forward. That's my mission in life, is to move people forward. And I've always done that. Mm-hmm. So whatever that means for them. And the biggest contribution I have at the moment is this podcast. We're up to 180 episodes now or so. So, that I hopefully, I'm changing lives with it. That's what I hope.
Not to ask you another question, but
go on.
May I?
Yeah.
So through doing the 180 episodes of the podcast, what has been the kind of biggest surprise for you of doing it, like actually being in it versus what you thought when you started?
The biggest surprise?
Yeah.
Don't know really. There hasn't been many huge surprises really.
It's gone pretty much how you thought it
would. Well,
would.
I don't know. I mean, I guess I knew a lot of the stuff anyway, because I've been doing personal development for 30 years. So I guess a lot of the stuff I people say to me, I recognize. So it's not as though I hadn't heard it before. What is interesting is hearing it from people that have experienced it firsthand, who have experienced things firsthand. Like, so I've heard that this is beneficial. Well, this saved my life. That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
When someone says to you that I turned my life around, from serious addiction and this, that, and the other with gratitude, you think so, well, I knew gratitude was important, but I didn't think it was that important.
Yeah.
So, when you get up in the morning and give thankful for the day he's about to have and the fact he didn't take drugs yesterday, so those sort of things, for him, and it's like, now I'm 2 days without taking drugs, I'm 3 days without taking drugs, and I have gratitude for that. So those are the things that I learned from people, is the power of literally of some of the simplest things that we do. Because I think we need to move forward. So, what is the one question that you want people to ask you?
So when we talked a little bit briefly about this before, and you said I was allowed to answer this the way I wanted to answer it.
You can say it.
Okay, because I interpreted it differently when I read it, which was, what do I wish people would ask themselves?
Yes, a nice way of putting it.
So the question that I would wish more people would ask themselves is this: first of all, within my identity, what are the sort of groups that I am in that inform my identity? And what are the value systems that determine status within that group? So for instance, like if I'm an academic, okay, let's say I'm a history professor, the that's my identity. That's one of the important identities for me. There's a whole set of values that are often not explicitly stated that determine who's got high and low status within that group. And because that's invisible, people are struggling to get high status, and they don't pause and think, do these values really align with my values, right? We are so locked in a game of competition all the time, and in a game of identity formation, that we don't often stop and reflect and say, are the values that are determining my status within my groups that I identify with actually my values? And that's just something that has been super important for me, because I haven't been someone who's easily fit into identity groups at all. And a large part of the reason why is because my values don't align very easily with a lot of the groups that I encounter. So like, the reason I didn't become a college professor is because my values actually don't align with the real values of a lot that goes on in academic departments and on down the line. So being able to articulate what your values are and seeing, hey, do my values really align within the identity groups that I'm in, and we're all in them, then that would be the question.
I think that thing is massive. Actually, a lot of people don't even know what their values are. They go through their life without even realizing their values. And I think value work is amazing stuff to do. So, my friend, how do people get in touch with you if they want to? Because there's a lot of stuff you've discussed here. What is it you're looking for, and who do you want to talk to?
Well, I would say anyone who's interested in talking to me, the easiest way is just go to my website. It's peterelam.com, and you can kind of see the projects I'm working on there, and it's got my email address and other things. So it's ELAM as in Mary, and actually named after a town in England, which is called Elham. Do you know Elham?
I do.
Yeah. So it's named after that. So peterelam.com. Anyone who wants to reach out to me, just go there and send me an email.
And you are on social media, of course, are you?
Of course. I'm on LinkedIn, but honestly, that's another conversation. But no, I don't have.
You're not on LinkedIn.
I am on LinkedIn.
You are on LinkedIn. Fantastic.
But other social media, I've more or less, I'm not on it right now.
Okay. Well, all those links will be available at the website Life, Passion and Business. So, Peter, the last question I ask all of my guests is, what is the meaning of life for you?
I think for me, the meaning of life is to pursue that sort of like overall purpose that I have. That's what it is to me.
That's succinct. That's the first time you've been succinct in the whole conversation.
That's true.
No, it's been a fantastic conversation, my friend. And I agree with you. Yes, fulfilling our purpose is always a good thing to do. So thank you so much for turning up today and being here, having this conversation with me. And, all the best.
All the best to you. Thanks a lot for having me.
Cheers.
All right, cheers.
And that was Life, Passion and Business with Paul Harvey and my guest, Peter Elam. If you are interested in community building or the tools that are required for connection, do reach out to Peter. I'm sure you would have a fascinating conversation. No Tribe is his community building project. It uses old houses as the venue. His idea is to create learning community hubs. You can find out more details about the project at notribe.org. If you were intrigued by the description of the software app for document sharing and communication, it is a clever content management tool called Diamond Tree. There is a 14-day free trial on that, and Peter has generously given my listeners, as in you, a 50% discount using the code PASSION, and that's PASSION all in caps. So go to diamondtree.org and check it out. You can also check out Peter's professional site, which is peterelam.com, and then you can also find him on LinkedIn. All those links can be found at the website lifepassionandbusiness.com. And while you're there, do check out the resources page for supportive content. And that's it from me this week. So if you've enjoyed this podcast, if you enjoy any podcast, please like, share and review. As you know, it supports the ecosystem and helps people like yourself find good podcasts. As always, thank you for your time and attention. I'll catch you next time. All the best.